Ross Taylor couldn't see at night or when the clouds were in. Eventually, he had to see an eye specialist who would fix his eyesight. In the 2 years before the change, he still averaged more than 50 in international cricket. The top level of batting talent can basically see in the dark. That is who we are talking about in our new book, The Art of Batting. Head over and order your copy today. Welcome to Good Areas Live. Jarrod Kimber here for another show. Wagon Wheel, the podcast about cricket, where we answer your questions. I've been workshopping the intro. I'm not quite sure where I am exactly with it at the moment. But if you want to support us, or you're not, actually, you may not want to support us at all. But if you want to support us and ask questions during the show, the YouTube live chats super chats is the best way to go. So anything that we get on there, we will obviously answer and get to as much as we can. However, we will also take questions from Patreon. So Patreon gives you access to our Discord channel. It allows you to ask questions on this show, get you ad-free podcasts and all sorts of other things. On a certain tier, you get access to the emailer as well. All these many good things that we have. So please go over to Patreon, Good Areas Podcast. You can find us over there. And you can ask questions like Neil has, who says, looking forward to tomorrow night's event. Hey, yeah. So me and Tim Wigmore will be in Piccadilly Waterstones tomorrow from 6:30 p.m. If you want to find it, the pinned tweet on my account is there at the moment. So go and find that pinned tweet and you can come and join us. It's 10 quid to come. You can buy a book there. You can bring a book and I could sign it for you if that's what you're looking for. Me and Wigmore will be speaking for about an hour, but we'll be hanging around afterwards. So, so many people contact me and say, oh, I want to meet you at this test match. Like, at the test match, I have 2.5 full-time jobs. the last week at Edgbaston, I had to go up and down the stairs about 10,000 times. I was killing my fitness goals, right? Like, my watch was saying to me, I think you should slow down. That's how much I was doing. At test matches, it's very hard for me to meet people. I know I don't have as much of these live events. It's something that we'll probably look at more and more in the future. But in order to do them, people need to come to the ones that we're having. So if you can come to this, it would be absolutely great. We will be chatting about test cricket and batting and cricket books and all sorts of things. So come meet us at Piccadilly and Waterstones tomorrow at 6:30. And you can buy your tickets now. They're like 10 quid. Anyway. Where do you see the series going from here? With England potentially rejigging its bowling lineup, Bumrah returning, McCullum Stokes asking curators for faster, spicier wickets. Will they get that at Lord's, Old Trafford, at the Oval? Look, Old Trafford, I'm just going to go out there and say it'd be surprising to me if the wicket had anything, just based on, the cricket that I've been following up there. I haven't looked at the games in a little while, but I'd be surprised. Lord's, we have seen they can put some grass on it. I am expecting some grass on it. The Oval, didn't it just have an 800-run innings or something like that not that long ago? So, yeah, I do think there is definitely something that is quite majorly changed there as well. Separately, why would venues and counties do anything other than try and ensure matches last 5 days to maximize earnings? Don't shorter tests also annoy broadcasters? So it's an interesting one. We had that whole period, especially in England, from 2005 onwards, where they tried to make sure that the pitch has lasted as long as possible, and it meant that the cricket was really boring. And I don't know if it affected sales, but I don't think it really built hype the way that the boards wanted, right? Or the local boards wanted. So I do think there was a bit of an issue with doing that. Yes, most of the major English venues would prefer the test goes 5 days. They don't actually make that much money on the 5th day, though, because you can't sell the tickets in advance for anything other than the Ashes. And so it's a bit of a weird one when it comes to the 5th day. You really just have to make sure it goes 4 days. And, mostly test matches seem to go 4 days. The shorter tests also annoy broadcasters. Yes, at a certain point. But shorter tests are generally really, really exciting and lots of things are happening and more people are going to watch them. I've never had a broadcaster that I'm aware of complain that tests were not exciting, were too short, right? Whereas I've had a lot of them complain that it's not exciting, but it does annoy them a little bit. But England are trying to win test matches, and which makes a lot of sense. Thank you, Neil. Aravind says, oh, this is the question. More than a decade ago, I saw a video about Cristiano Ronaldo where they got him in a lab and did a bunch of tests on him. One of the things they did was turn the lights out. Yeah, I wrote about this in the Art of Batting. I'm pretty sure I wrote about this exact test. I think I talked about Ronaldo, or did I do the Wayne Rooney one? They did it with Wayne Rooney as well. And essentially, they turned the lights out as someone was kicking a ball from 50 to 60 yards, and Ronaldo was able to connect with the ball, even in the dark, and score. This blew my mind, as suddenly the phrase, he's got so much time with the bat, took a new meaning. Yeah, elite batters basically picking up clues from a bowler earlier than everyone else. My question is, can it be taught as a science? So, I think before Ronaldo did this, we'd done this in cricket. I actually think cricket was ahead of football with this, and it was Jacques Kallis, who, again, they would turn the lights off, and he would hit quite a few balls or be really close to balls. And they did it with amateur cricketers, and they were nowhere near it. Your question was really, can we take all this sort of stuff that Ronaldo or Kallis or any of the other greats have and teach someone else? And at the moment, no. We don't know how to teach them. That is the truth. We would love to be in a situation where we could work this out. I've said this a bit in the, talking, in the promotions for the book of, if we could work out exactly what it was that we could teach people, you could take people who had other elite skills with batting. So maybe great techniques or, incredible patience or incredible power, and just make them into great test batters. Teaching them how to read all those subtle cues. And the problem for Ronaldo or Kallis is they do all this subconsciously. So the person I heard talk about this the best was Raul Dravid, when he was trying to teach the hovering front foot, right? Which is a slightly different thing, but it's still another skill that obviously in modern cricket they try and teach people, which is you don't put your front foot all the way down. You sort of have it touching the ground, but with the ability to move it around depending on what happens next. When Dravid is watching the game or watching a bowler come in, he can tell you exactly when you need to move your foot and how you need to move your foot, right? He might not be able to move his foot anymore at his age, but he still has the ability to do that. What he can't do is give anyone else clues in how to do that. And that's what he's talked about. He's very honest with it. He doesn't know how to do it. It took me forever to get one batter to really explain what they were even looking at. Right. And I was lucky enough to chat to Matt Pryor once, and he explained it to me after he kept saying things that didn't make sense. And I was like, this doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense. And then he went, it's like watching a TV and you do, okay, I get it. I've tried to do what Matt Pryor taught me, which is focus my eyes in like I'm watching a TV. So there's nothing else on the field except for the little bits around the bowler's hand. The problem is that the ball's still bouncing up and down. So I'm still not seeing that. And even if you listen to the Matt Pryor thing, well, what happens if the bowler comes wide on the crease? So clearly Matt Pryor is still processing other information that even he isn't able to fully develop at that point. So I don't think at the moment we can teach the subconscious parts of batting because it's very hard for batters to even tell you what they do. I don't think at the moment we can teach the television method perfectly, although that is something that we can at least help with. We can't teach the saccading of the eyes, which is what Ronaldo and Kallis are doing. Actually, probably less so Ronaldo. That would be more of what the tennis players are doing and everyone else, which is you can't follow the ball. So how do you look at the ball in the first 3 meters, decide where the serve is going, and then go and return the serve? We can't teach all of those things. So if we can teach one or two of those things in the future, maybe we'll be able to get to a point where that can happen. But we're a long way away, Aravind. Sam says, in the crick picks for batters under 40, Varun pointed out that often it's a failure, it's a stat pad that makes a difference. Vian Mulder declared whilst inside of Lara's record, claiming the record should remain with Lara. Does this demonstrate that Mulder lacks the mindset of greed necessary to be a top batter? Oh, I like that. No, because he's got not out. He's protected his red inker there. He's done exactly what he needed to do. He's got all the runs and done that. Look, all players are very different, but yeah, there is definitely there are certain players who just want to be out there forever. So Chandrapal is a perfect example of this. Steve Waugh, I'm trying to think of some others. Boycott, Kallis, they just want to be out there forever, right? They don't like being back in the change room. And it's not that they're stat padding, because it's a terrible phrase, but they just want to keep batting. Steve Smith doesn't like being in the change room, right? Mark Waugh liked hanging out in the change room. He's done his job. He's feeling good. Off he goes, right? Like, so I think everyone is very, people are very different in that. And so you do get a situation where maybe someone like Mark Waugh, Aravinda De Silva, Ben Stokes, they kind of see batting in a very different way than many other players. And so you see great players with a lower average. Varun's right. There are a lot of players who average under 40 because they don't go on to score very high scores, and they don't go on when the day's good. But there's also a lot of guys who average under 40 just because they're not very good as well. Like, it is a combination of a few different things. Usually it's a technical issue as well, right? That they can never really get past. Yashar says, the rest of the world test matches in 1771 were originally classified as official tests. I've always wondered why the test status of these games was rescinded. Why some subsequent rest of the world 11s were given official status. Yeah, I mean, I don't think I have a great answer for you there, Yashar, but you're right. It's weird. It's arbitrary. I think one day they'll probably get their status again. Like, I just think if anyone ever looks at it, they should get their status again. It's very silly for them not to have it. We make a lot of arbitrary decisions, women's cricket not being first class, but university cricket in the UK being first class is another one. I think if you actually went through it, you'd make a lot of different decisions. A lot of the other thing is, I don't think people understand just how arbitrary test cricket status is. If you go back to, the tests that we decided were tests and weren't tests, it's a bit random. And unfortunately, we've always been like that. I don't even know how you would fix this at the moment, but I kind of feel one day it will just be fixed, but who knows? The two says a lot of good first change bowlers are talls. Are tall stock bowlers. Garner, Cummins, Morkel. When scouting first change bowlers, are these attributes teams should look for, or are there other skills that can be successful at first change? Is Pat Cummins that tall? What's he, 6'2", 6'3"? I mean, 192 centimeters. He's tallish. What's that? 6'3", 6'4", probably. Yeah, I wouldn't. I mean, in modern cricket, I don't think I'd call Pat Cummins a tall bowler. Hazelwood and Stark are 2 inches taller than him. So Morkel and Garner definitely you could put there. I would say that the reason that you have a first change bowler who's more likely to be tall is actually more to do with the kind of bowlers that you have. So if you want your new ball bowlers to swing it, well, tall bowlers don't usually swing the ball, right? So and there's a what would you call it? There's a scientific reason to that. It's very hard for a tall bowler to bowl the ball very full. Like Kyle Jamieson is a bit of an anomaly. Most tall bowlers, when they try and bowl it full, it comes out really floaty because of physics, I suppose. And it comes out floaty, and so they get smashed. So tall bowlers generally bowl a little bit shorter. And if you bowl shorter, the ball doesn't swing. So if you're not a swing bowler, you're probably traditionally much less likely to get the new ball, would be my guess. Let me just have a quick look. Also, if just on a sort of a separate conversation there, you'd have to have Neil Wagner in as one of the best first change bowlers in cricket history, and he's certainly not. How do I do this? He's certainly not someone who would use the. What would he be? 5'10"? Not actually sure what his actual height is. Courtney Walsh, so he's another tall one. Botham's not very tall, is he? I wouldn't have thought. Flintoff bowled a lot first change. So there's a few tall guys. You've also got Siddle. You got Holder. It's another tall guy. Wokes is pretty tall, isn't he? Edmund's pretty tall. Yeah, there's a few of them there. So I think it's probably less to do with you will pick someone who is a tall bowler because they're tall. I think it's more likely to do that you're picking a tall bowler because they're more likely to be a seam bowler. And so therefore they don't need their new ball traditionally in cricket, the swing bowlers would get the new ball before the seam bowlers would, right? Because that makes sense. So I would assume that is why we've seen it. Ali says, is there any validity to the reports of a World Club T20 Championship? You mean other than the one in Guyana that already exists? No, it's been discussed. We've had it before, obviously. It wasn't set up perfectly well, and we weren't used to franchise cricket or anything at that point. So the world has changed quite a bit of recent times. Saudi Arabia definitely want this as one of their events or whatever. I think with the partnership between BCCI and other cricket boards and Saudi Arabia and the Ambani family and everything, there is a chance of having that. I still don't think it is. I still wonder how successful it will be. Just because a lot of those other franchises, it's not quite like when Otago played or Victoria played or Cape Cobras played or whatever it was. It's a bit different now. But I still don't know if the other franchises around the world have enough. And then you've got owners owning the same teams. They might have 3 teams qualify, which, how do you stretch your players out if you've got players? You know, there are question marks around it. But yeah, no, it's been talked about the last 6-7 months, I would say now. So there is a definite possibility that we'll get it. But yeah, I wouldn't hold your breath or anything. Let's have a quick break. And after this, more Wagon Wheel. I have traveled the cricketing world, and so I've collected 2 things: the phone numbers of random taxi drivers and overseas SIM cards. Rideshare apps have fixed the first part, and Sally is doing the second. Now, all you need is their eSIM on whatever plan works for you. You activate it, and you can use it anywhere in the cricketing world. It helps you save money. It is a global solution to a global problem. Stop fiddling with tiny SIMs and get the one that does it all. Go to Sally.com Good Areas and use the code Good Areas to get an exclusive 15% off your first purchase. Fly free with Sally. All right, welcome back. Sinoy says bowling overs are arranged in base 6, while a T20 game is base 20. An ODI is base 5, yet we set batting achievements in base 50. Despite boundaries being base 2. It's based. Bowling makes more sense because the achievement is taking either half or all the wickets or what. Okay, yeah. I had this conversation on TalkSport the other day that we've just sort of arbitrarily again decided that 50 and 100 makes sense. The 100, of course, is we go from double figures to triple figures. So it looks good, I suppose, from that perspective. The 50 is just half of that. But us celebrating those achievements, I think, causes an issue within batting, right? Because I think it changes the way that you think about batting. I think people slow down on the way to 100s. People get nervous on the way to 100s. People quite often get dismissed after getting 100, etc., etc. I just don't think that's the best way of doing the cricket. So I'm already against milestones. We don't use them a lot in our work compared to probably, most cricket sites. We're not, there's a piece I've got coming up at the moment where I'm talking about that a little bit because it shows you a pattern of a player quicker, but we don't use them that much because I'm not all that interested. But your point is also like the 50 and the 100 at least make a lot more sense in Test cricket, whereas actually in T20 cricket, I don't know what 30 and 75 or 35 and 75 or something would make more sense. And in T20 cricket, like a 3-wicket haul is massive, right? So yeah, there is an element that they don't make sense, and you've said here, in a way, does a 5 and a 10, so a fifth, if you make 50, it is absolutely not. It is not equivalent to taking a 5-wicket haul. A 5-wicket haul is way more impressive. So they don't even correlate with each other, right? But at a certain point, we like to stop and clap players, and that's essentially what you were talking about here. We need round numbers that make sense to us, our tiny little brains. And that we want to stop and clap them. Sandeep says, do you think we'll ever reach a point where cricket allows free use of match footage, perhaps after a set delay, for creating analytical content? For example, Your recent breakdown of Jaiswal and my ones would have been even better with a few video snippets to illustrate the point. No, I don't. Not across the game. I think maybe smart franchises. If I was running a franchise at the moment, this is what I would be doing, is just saying, you can't use more than this amount of minutes, but if you, and we're going to share, and you can advertise on it. You can run Google ads, but we claim the money rather than you. I've offered this to boards. We don't want to make money off their footage. What we want to do is be able to show it because it makes our lives easier and it makes the videos better. It makes cricket better. We can show things when we have footage that we can't do without footage, right? It's stupid. And we used to get an animator, and we don't have an animator again at the moment. Maybe one day we will. But I don't think there'll ever be a point where it's blanket. It's stupid. If you look at the way that basketball has moved ahead through YouTubers, cricket could do the exact same thing, right? And unfortunately, you can't do it, and you get your site taken down. And there's some really great storytellers as well who put footage up, who can't monetize their sites, right? So it isn't just about analysis. They get to a certain point, these people, they get heaps of subscribers, but they can't get any proper sponsors because sponsors know that they're breaking copyright regulations, right? It's silly what we do in cricket. We're shooting ourselves in the foot. But I've done this speech so many times. Cricket boards are so small-minded and are so silly when it comes to sharing footage and growing their game that they are causing themselves a long-term problem when they don't need to do it. Letting every YouTuber in the world use 5 minutes of game highlights on their site is advertising for the people who have bought the rights. It is advertising for Sony, Star, Geo, Channel 7, Supersport, Sky. It is literally advertising their product. Because the only way that you can watch the game live is to go to their places or pay them. But let's not do that. Let's instead make sure that some company can put up a highlights package that no fucker's watching anyway. Mob says, once you get past the madcap openers, is batting number complete bullshit compared to medium point of entry? Years ago, I had this conversation with Jarrod where we were talking about analytics, and I was sort of saying that it doesn't make sense for Jonathan Trott to come out and bat if the score's 200 for 1 and 12 for 1. How can he be the right person for both jobs? And Roll Driver being a number 3 was like, no, you can. But I just don't think you can, right? It's hard to find 7 batters in modern cricket who can play in Test cricket. But it's hard to find 7 batters in modern cricket who have the skills and the talent and the flexibility to move around the order. But there is an element of, if England are 200 for without loss, don't you want Brooke to come in? Or Root? Do you need Pope to come in at that point? Pope's job is if you lose an early wicket. And maybe that's a bad one. I'm trying to think of a better one. Oh, if Australia are 200 for none, Travis Head or Steve Smith is the person who should be coming in next, not Marnus Leversane or Cameron Green or whatever. Like, again, so I do think there's an element that batting numbers are used incorrectly. So yeah, I think, and then over time we should be able to get an idea of which players should be coming in earlier and which players should be coming in later, as you talk about medium point of entry. It's something that we've started using a lot. I think we started using it the most for the book, if I remember correctly, because it's really hard to work out number 5s and number 6s. And Andy Flower and Michael Clark are 2 different species of number 5s, right? Even Steve Waugh, there's so many 90s kids are upset now. You don't know how many times he got Australia out of trouble. I'm like, well, I do, because I think he made most of his runs at the MCG, so I was there for a lot of them. He seemed to make 100 every time he was out in the every time he was batting in the MCG. So I've seen him do that, but I also know that his median entry point was 120, and that's going to the wicket being carried by whispers. So I do think that there is an element of flexibility that we need to talk about, and batting numbers are. You can play for one side and bat at number 5, and that's the equivalent of being a number 4, right, on your median entry point. And you can go to another, and you can bat for another team, and you're batting at number 5, and that's the equivalent of being number 6. I think that's probably right, and I think that's what you're trying to say, Mob. And it's kind of where we're trying to get to with our work, I think, as much as anything else. Neil says, if you were coaching someone to bat, then would you have them to hold the bat up while facing, or down tapping the crease, like most batters used to till about 10 or 15 years ago? Just read the Cricket Info piece from a few years ago about it, and it seems both have merit, but the bat up method hasn't made its way to too many coaching manuals. Should most people pick it up? I've talked about that Cricket Info piece before. SB Tang wrote it is wrong, sadly. His hypothesis that Mike Hussey started that, but that side of it is wrong. The other stuff's really interesting about. I know players who've switched mid-career. It might be a better question for someone like Robbie, but I know players who switch mid-career. Generally, when you switch, most players will tell you it feels better to switch. So I almost wonder if both of them are right, and it just gives you a different lease on life. I started as bat down in my life, and then I had a coach who said it was basically I had trouble controlling my back lift. So if I had the bat down, I would go up like Lara, which of course meant I smashed the ball everywhere, but smart bowlers were just targeting me for Yorkers over and over again, and bowling really, really full to me. So it's either whacking the ball past them or just getting bowled in LBW again and again. So, I don't teach kids either. I kind of show them how to hold the bat, roughly. I mean, even that's not right. If they're holding the bat wrong, I will suggest other methods that I think might feel more comfortable to them. And I've never said to a kid, hold your bat up or keep it down. I think both of my boys hold the bat up, but I wouldn't have bothered if either of them had gone down. My daughter she's only 4, but she's a big tapper, loves the tap. So I think I would just let them go and find it naturally. And then if something's not working or there's a way of changing it, that's when you look at that. I actually think with Ezekiel, I think it might actually help him to have the bat down as the bowler comes in. But I don't want to. He's batting quite well at the moment, so I don't want to change anything. And he says, is there any particular reason why a large percentage of centre fast bowlers seem to have been able to hold their own with a bat, and Asian spinners seem able to do the same? Does that have anything to do with how they grew up playing cricket? Current examples: Cast, Wokes, Overton, Jofra, Atkinson, Azari, Shamar, Joseph. Yeah, okay. I think spinners generally are better at batting than quick bowlers as a overall rule. And the reason I would say that is that fast bowlers generally end up being more athletically chosen. So you become a fast bowler because you have the athletic gifts to be able to do it. And there are a lot of people who come to spin late without the athletic gifts of spin bowling. So there is probably a slightly higher percentage of spinners who can bowl, spinners who can bat compared to seamers in general. You sometimes get people, sometimes we get spinners like Tufnell or Murali or Monty. Monty's a bad example here, but Tufnell or Murali, who are obviously very athletically gifted. Chandrasekhar would be another one. They're obviously very athletically gifted around the hands and wrists, right? But maybe that's it, and they don't have any other if quite often the least athletic players on the field will be a specialist spinner, right? That's a very common thing. Mujib, Chahal, Stuart McGill. Like, you see a lot of those guys who are, I'm not saying they're not athletically gifted, because as I said, maybe they have shoulders and elbows and fingers and wrists and all these sorts of things, but they're not athletically gifted in a sort of traditional athletic capacity. Whereas fast bowlers are quite often athletically gifted. So there are some spinners who can't bat at all. So it's not like there's even a pattern within spin, right? So just looking at your list here, I mean, a lot of those players are all-rounders, right? So Wokes is an all-rounder, Overton's an all-rounder, or maybe not a lot of them, a couple of them are, and Jameson was an all-rounder. So all three of those guys could bat when they were young, and I think Task could as well when he was young. Joffre could bat when he was young. Stark was a wicketkeeper who could bat when he was young. So there's actually quite a few guys in that list that you have shown that showed batting promise when they were younger. And then probably my guess is that they athletically grew into bowlers, right? So certainly the case for Joffre and Stark, who we now see as probably more standard bowlers. But when they were younger, they were wicketkeeper batters, right? So you would see them in the way that you would see like the way we have in the NBA, where you might have a guy who's like 6'2" and is a point guard, and then he goes to college and he grows 8 inches, and suddenly he's a power forward or a center, right? But he still has some of the skills left over from when he was a point guard, right? You know, Anthony Davis is a perfect example of that in basketball. So you have players like that who have that sort of growth pattern, which is a little bit different, Addy. Now, within that, wouldn't you say we have more Liam Dawson, Moeen Ali? Maybe we don't. Samit Patel, New Zealand have a lot of these guys. The guy plays for South Africa at the moment. Is it Methaswamy? Marcus North type guys, where they're not specialist batters, but they can bowl. And then they develop their bowling as they play at the top level more and more. Kedar Yadav, maybe in limited overs cricket, would be another one. Yuvraj Singh. So, you know, Darren Lehman, Joe Root, these sorts of guys can actually add that. So spin bowling, sometimes, I think over time, it's a skill that you can learn through being smart and following the game and having maybe a couple of exceptional skills. You know, Colin Miller, you know, if you look at the amount of spinners we've had who've only become spinners late in life or only become good at spinning late in life, it's unlike almost any other skill in cricket. There aren't many people outside of Dirk Nannes and Mick Lewis, and to be honest, they were both good fast bowlers when they were young. They just weren't in the system, who become fast bowlers late in life, right? Craig White would be one, maybe. Most people become fast bowlers between the age of 15 and 22, right? So spin is something so they're not even comparable in that way, Addy. So I don't know. Also remember that when you're looking at international cricket, you're looking at a very small sample size. You're also looking at England. If you look at how many of these players are English, right? England are trying to pick players with secondary skills. Are there better specialist bowlers in England than some of these guys that are not being picked? Well, certainly in the case of Cass, Overton, trying to see if there's any others there. You would have to say that there are probably better specialist bowlers that are around. Would Wokes have played as much cricket if he couldn't bat? Probably not with his away record, right? So there is a bit of a selection bias, I think, within that you have to factor in as well. But yeah, it's. I do think there's definitely different athleticisms between those two things, and I can certainly see how that would play out in vastly random ways. Quick break, and then more Wagon Wheel. I have traveled the cricketing world, and so I've collected two things: the phone numbers of random taxi drivers and overseas SIM cards. Rideshare apps have fixed the first part, and Sally is doing the second. Now, all you need is their eSIM on whatever plan works for you. You activate it and you can use it anywhere in the cricketing world. It helps you save money. It is a global solution to a global problem. Stop fiddling with tiny SIMs and get the one that does it all. Go to Sally.com Good Areas and use the code Good Areas to get an exclusive 15% off your first purchase. Fly free with Sally. PJ says, I've noticed that many umpires in county cricket are former county pros. I went through the list and found that only 7 are not... That only 7 of the 34 pro umpires in the UK are not former professional cricketers. while it's great to keep former pros in the game and employed, isn't this also just shuffling the door early on potential young aspiring umpires? There appears to be a huge push towards fast-tracking former first-class umpires into senior umpiring roles. What benefits would a former professional cricketer that starts their umpiring career at 40 have over a regular person who starts umpiring while they're a teenager? England's always done this. And it's almost seen as a secondary profession. You play and you can coach or you can umpire. People who don't want to coach quite often go on to be umpires. And, a lot of my friends are, Jack Chantry's an umpire now. People I was around during their career. So there is an element of that. I think you also make a really good point, though, that I think you want 50% of your professional umpires to be former players and 50% not to be, because it's diversifying the talent pool. It's getting people who are the best specialist umpires coming through. And then secondly, it's while diversifying the talent pool, you're actually bringing in new ideas and new ways of doing things, right? And that's what it should be. But I also like the idea of having professional players as umpires, because they can spot things that not all professional umpires who haven't played do. So having a combination of both, I think, is the ideal world, because former players just know tricks. Like, if you haven't, like, I've played so much cricket, right? Like, I'm not a professional, obviously, but I've played so much cricket that I just know that everyone tampers with the ball. So if I'm umpiring, I'm always keeping a bit of an eye on the ball, right? Like, I'll go out of my way to pick up the ball, just make sure that the opposition isn't mucking around with it, right? Because I've played so much cricket in my life that I've never met a cricket team that doesn't tamper with the ball, right? Picking the seam, throwing it into the ground on purpose, scratching it with your fingernail, putting Vaseline on it, all these things. I grew up with people who did this, right? For and against. Some things do actually help, having played the game. And I'm talking about one little thing, but I know that there's lots of them. And also, players feel very comfortable when there is a former pro on the field, because of that same reason of like, oh, yeah, he's played the game, he knows, right? But you also make a great point. This is the same thing with coaching. There are some players who pick up, who are naturals to coaching. There are some players who, over the course of their career, learn how to coach even before they become a coach. But there are also people who start coaching at 15 and 16 who are just genius coaches who couldn't play the game. Why would we not want both, right? And I think that's probably what you're saying. And they can both move the game forward, right? James says, is it possible to bowl a swinging wobble ball? Are there bowlers known to be able to do this consistently? Jimmy Anderson's the only one I know who's done it consistently. I know that there are certainly bowlers who... I'm trying to think of the best way of putting this. I know that there are certainly bowlers who have the ability to get their wobble ball to swing, but whether they do it intentionally, I'm not sure. Jimmy Anderson is the only one that I'm aware of who had worked this out. I think it will be a development that might happen a little bit, but also if you're in really swinging conditions and the seam is almost straight, you can still get it to swing sometimes, right? Like if you watch T20 cricket, if you watch Bhuvi Kumar, right? If he's trying to swing the ball, the seam is absolutely perfect and it curves away. But if you watch a bowler who's not as good as him, sometimes the seam won't be perfect, but the ball will still curve away because of, the wrist position that they've released it from, right? And all those sorts of things. So yes, whether it is something that is repeatable at the moment for most bowlers, no, but there is a possibility in the future, James. Ali says, how do you see the new crop of Afghanistan players, assuming now without access to Pakistan club cricket scene, where they previously honed their skills? So I think we've already started to see that a little bit, haven't we? This last generation, they now have a professional setup. They have all these sort of mini tournaments and micro tournaments and competitions against each other. I've talked about that before. It actually acts as a pretty good development tool for them, even if it's very different to traditional club cricket, as you're talking about in Pakistan and in other countries. So it is different. It's actually more like the American system, right? Where the best cricketers go from tournament to tournament. And so they're actually all playing against each other anyway. It's just not a club scene, right? So you don't have a strong Chennai club scene or, Staffordshire club scene, right? It's different than that. So I think that I think what we'll see is more of a divergence between Afghanistan cricket and Pakistan cricket maybe into the future. Whereas before, I almost felt that, they were sort of they were just Pashtun cricketers who all played very similarly because they all grew up in the same area. Whereas you might start to get different kinds of players coming through in Afghanistan, even if they might still be Pashtun. They may not play in that sort of, I mean, what I think I wrote of them that they're a team of Shahid Afridis, right? That's kind of, and their favorite player everyone's favorite player was Shahid Afridi. It's probably not now, right? And you're going to get Afghanistani kids who are going to grow up with like wanting to be, Ibrahim, right? Or some of the other, more, Fazal Haq Faruqi or whatever, different kinds of cricketers. So I think that will change naturally. But I think they've got an okay system. It's probably not brilliant system. It's not exactly what you want. Thinoy says, when a batter steps out between balls and pats a bit of the ground out, it's okay. Yet if the same batsman happens to run on that bit of the pitch when taking runs, they get a warning. When a bowler uses let me just stop there. The difference is when a batter does that, they're not running down the middle of the pitch. And if a batter walks down the middle of the pitch to fix something on the wicket and was in the danger area, they also still get warned, Thinoy. So that's very different. Secondly, walking on the pitch doesn't affect the pitch in the same way that running on the pitch does. So umpires are a little bit more lenient with that. And generally, the only time that you are patting the danger area of the pitch, you're not patting it. You're either patting it or doing something. There is an actual problem with the wicket, and that umpires again allow. But if you have a look, most batters come up to the side, and they lean into the middle. When a bowler uses synthetic material to manipulate the ball to their advantage, rubbing it on their trousers, it's normal. But when they do the same with a different synthetic material, sandpaper, it's a controversy. There seems to be a lot of these little quirks in our game that don't make much sense to me. So again, the difference is that your trousers are there to shine the ball. So you're actually trying to keep the ball in its original condition for as long as possible. Sandpaper is there to do the opposite. It is there to actually change the ball to a new, separate kind of condition. So you're not trying to get it back to what it was or keep it as new as possible. So when you say little quirks, these are actually fairly major different quirks, in a way. Please can you explain to me why they would draw the line between normal behavior and cheating the way we do in cricket? So I think I've basically explained it through what I've talked about there. We already allow ball tampering all the way through, but that's, as I said before, different conversation for a different day. You can completely alter the state of a ball so it acts alien by tampering with it with, let's say, sandpaper. You can't do that with trousers, right? Unless you're using the zip of the trousers. And shout out to South Africa for doing that for a little while. And all the county teams I think there was a thing where all the county teams had zips on their trousers. You should have zips on trousers anyway in cricket. Like, otherwise, every time you try and field a ball, everything comes out. But that's, again, different conversation. So that's very different. And again, walking on the wicket, because let's say there is an area that you can only get to, which is very rare, by standing on the middle of the wicket. If you're just standing there and you're patting it down, that's absolutely fine. If you're running up the middle of the wicket, your spikes are literally tearing at the surface. Look at the foot marks, right? So we can't have that throughout the middle of the pitch, right? Whereas people do sometimes walk on the pitch. Who was it? I saw this the other day. I think it was Ollie Pope who tried to jump over the middle of the pitch, to swap sides, and just got his launch angle wrong and ended up in the middle of the wicket. And you can see him looking around to make sure no one was watching because he'd done the wrong thing and he knew he had. And he only did it once, and also it doesn't help England for him to stand in the middle of the wicket if they're batting last on that pitch. So I don't think he did it on purpose, but it was funny watching someone do that. But yeah, we are trying to keep the surface and the ball as close to day one as possible. That is what gardening is doing. And that is what rubbing the ball on your trousers is doing. The things that you're talking about, intentionally running up the middle of the wicket, is completely different and would completely change the game. So that's why those quirks exist. Mob says, let us assume you release an art of bowling to rapturous global acclaim. We can only imagine. What would your trilogy be? The art of keeping, fielding, captaincy, sports betting, writing, or some other facet? I don't know if there is a trilogy. I suppose I suppose there is an argument to doing the 50 greatest cricketers of all time, bringing in all formats and going back before Test cricket. Full of Pilch fans are just like, yes! Yeah, I wonder if there's an argument for that, right? And seeing just who the 50 greatest cricketers of all time are. Like, where does Chris Gale rank on the 50 greatest cricketers, right? Like, he missed out on our book. He wasn't that far away. He has a really interesting record, some really good stuff in his Test career, but a couple of things where he wasn't as good. I think spin in limited overs, in Test cricket, he struggles. And he, weirdly, not that good at limited overs either, for someone of his talent. But he has a really good Test record, you know, well above average, like a fringe great players record. Certainly a West Indian great record, I would say. And then one of the greatest T20 players of all time. Where does that put him in the 50 greatest cricketers who have ever existed? Where does that bring in the all-rounders and everything else? I don't think I'd do Art of Wicket Keeping, only because I think I would have to sell so many copies of the first two books to even justify that. I own about 4 books on wicket keeping, 5 books on wicket keeping. I find them fascinating. I don't know if I have a lot to add to them. The Art of Fielding, I think it's really interesting. I don't know if I can make a great book on that, though. A great article on it, like a 15,000 word article on fielding, I think I could probably knock off. A book I struggle with. Captaincy, I think everyone who's followed me long enough will know that I just don't rate captaincy. I would feel sick writing about it. But certainly sports betting and writing, I wouldn't do. But yeah, I have thought, if I was to do the third one in that series, 50 greatest cricketers of all time, I think is very interesting. The other version that you can do is the 50 most important cricketers of all time. You know, that allows you to sort of, I think that's a really interesting one, because then you've got people like Bernard Bosanquet, Clary Grimmett, Rachel Hayhoe Flint, Harmanpreet Kaur, I'm blanking on some other names. Obviously Ranjit Grace, Alfred Min, I suppose, comes in there. Basil D'Oliveira, you know, any direction that you want to go, right? Like Rashid Khan, Sandeep Lamachane as well, maybe. I don't know. I think that's quite an interesting one as well. Those are the directions I would be thinking. At the moment, I've not signed a deal to write the bowling one. The more batting ones you buy, the batting book is now available in India, hardcover and softcover. So if you want the cheap version, you can get that. If you want the more expensive version, you can get that. I think that hardcover might be available at the moment, and the softcover is pre-order, but it will be available very soon, I'm being told. I've been told that a few times, so let's see how we go. But yeah, if the more copies I sell, the more likely. But yeah, I think I would probably pivot away to something a little bit more different. You know, the good, the bad, the ugly. You know, so you've got your sort of more. My favorite trilogy is the Sergio Leone westerns, right? So if you look at the first 2 films, they're quite contained, and then the third one is the big epic. And so there's an element of, if I'm going to do a third one, that's kind of the direction I would want to go, rather than even containing it further. I'd like to go almost the other way, if that's possible. Sandeep says, if a wealthy entrepreneur wants to invest $2 million in Good Areas tomorrow, which specific division or project within Good Areas would receive the bulk of that investment? So we're trying to get money at the moment. We've been talking to investors. We've got some companies out there trying to get that investment for us. We are talking to major sponsors, which would also allow us to probably get investment quicker if we get those major sponsors on board. So hoping to do deals certainly well before the Women's World Cup, but sooner the better on some of those major deals. We're looking at about $3 million worth of investment, and we're selling a percentage of Good Areas as an LLC for that. What I would do is set up an entire network. That's what I'm trying to do. So Good Areas would be boosted because we would probably be able to hire just little things like an Adobe Photoshop, not Photoshop. What's the other one? Adobe. There's an Adobe software that allows you to do all the cool, weird things that you want to do. We need an animator on Good Areas. We need to turn the Hindi channel into a professional channel, which we haven't quite managed to do yet. So there would be parts of Good Areas that would do that. But actually what we want to do is start up between 10 and 16 podcasts across the Good Areas networks, which would allow us to have on a daily basis multiple podcasts on individual countries, on individual beats, all the time. That's what we want to be able to do for kind of the future of Good Areas. We want to be the people who start up the podcast network in cricket. And then within that, once we have access to really talented people from around the world, we can bring them into the main Good Areas brand as well. As in, not only would they appear on my podcasts, which is what we did with 99.94, but also, I don't know, if Mash has a great idea for a video essay, right, or a short documentary or whatever that may be, we can bring him into the main channel if he's working for us, because he's running Good Areas West Indies for us, right? Whoever we hire, we can go in any direction with that sort of stuff. And, that's what we want to be able to do at the moment. That's what we're trying to get the funding for. We want to be a multi-language, multi-team, multi-beat platform. I'm a global guy. I want to cover the entire cricket world, and I can only there's only so many hours in the day. I've got way too many children. I'm still doing other work for other companies. I'm not saying I would ever stop doing commentary work for other places, but I might stop doing other major work for other places that takes me away from Good Areas, which allows me to do that. We're trying to build a network that is a combination of the Athletic, Locked On network, taking little parts of perhaps The Ringer, taking little parts of SB Nation and John Boyce, all the different things that we do, and try and upgrade them, and then do them, as I said, multiple countries in multiple languages. That's kind of the future that we're trying to get to. I know what the present of sports media is, and I think I know what the future of it is. And that's what we're trying to do with that money. So if you know anyone, Sandeep, send me a message. PJ says, you mentioned how MV Play has changed how you're able to cover the game and essentially watch more cricket in less time. How long does it take you to watch a full day's play of each format using the service if you only use it to cover a particular game? Is there anything you feel you miss out on? How would you match report differ to those of a Good Areas colleague who've watched the entire match live? Yeah, it's very different. Watching on MV Play allows me to see patterns that I cannot see live during a game. And one of my main skills in life is pattern recognition. And even within that, PJ, it's incredible to me how many more patterns I can actually find when I am, when I'm able to do that live. It really is, very, very different. So there are some things I just see on MV Play that I would never see normally. What you don't see watching it live is you don't get the little tidbits, you don't get the little moments, you don't see the captain coming over and talking, you don't see field changes, you don't see any of that at all. That's the big thing that I miss out on. So I get some things and I lose some things. How long does it take? I could probably watch a T20 game in about 25 minutes, I want to say. A lot of it depends on who is logging the game for MV Play. Some people some people let the tape run longer, and some people are like, that ball's dead, next. So sometimes you get like a 4-second clip, and sometimes you get like a 30-second clip, right? Or like a 1.5-minute clip sometimes if they think there's a replay coming up. So depending on everything else. But yeah, I could probably watch a day's test match in about 30 to 35 minutes. So I will go back and watch balls. So it's very rare that I'll just let the tape play. So I don't know exactly how long it does. But yeah, it's very different. It adds stuff. I think I'm at my best when I can watch at the ground live, have access to a good TV. So at Edgbaston, I didn't have access to a good replay screen. The ones in the Edgbaston box, I always sit on the bottom. I've been sitting on the bottom row of Edgbaston recently, and the TVs are up high, and the sun reflects off them, and they're a long way from me. So I didn't have a great second screen, and then we didn't have a second screen for the TalkSport commentary. So I was kind of without a second screen. My perfect situation is I'm at the ground live. I can watch all the game. I have a 4-second delay screen, right? So that I can flick over straight away and watch the ball again, or even a 2-second delay screen, so I can watch that. Then I have another one that's like a 10-second delay, so I can watch it a third time, right? So I've watched it live, I've watched it on 2-second delay, now I'm watching it on a 10-second delay, and then I have MV play. That's my ideal situation. I feel like if that's the case, I'm watching every ball like 2.5 times in multiple different ways. James says, given the seeming trend towards filtering out seamers based on physical attributes as they go up levels, do you foresee more bowlers converting to spin or spin medium hybrid styles in adolescence or young adulthood, or is there already a trend of this? Yeah, it's very common it's actually very common for a spinner to be a seam bowler when they're young. I'm just going off the top of my head here. Kuldeep Yadav, Shane Warne, Ashley Giles, Michael Beer, Paul Harris. I'm trying to think if there's any others. It is very, very common for that. And what happens is you get to a certain level and you're no longer fast enough. Isn't there a great story of Wasim Akram going, Kuldeep Yadav saying, I tried to bowl like you when I was young. And Wasim Akram going, well, lucky that he took up spin, otherwise we never would have met. So, he didn't have the physical attributes of someone who could bowl fast. So there is an element of that. And if you look at the sort of, if I write the book on bowling, there's a whole chapter that I'm going to be doing about left arm finger spinners and how they develop differently in different countries, which I've always found really fascinating. A lot of left arm finger spinners in Western or center countries, however you want to put it, are fast bowlers who are really, really strong. Whereas left arm finger spinners in Asian countries are quite often half the size, right? And are like traditional type of spinners. So there is always an element of that. But yeah, and also the other thing I would add is a lot of these guys, so we talked about it a bit with one of the questions earlier on about the bowlers who could bat. A lot of professional cricketers are just really good athletes, right? Stuart Broad, Kyle Jamieson. These sorts of guys don't even know when they're who do I talk about before? Stark and Jofra Archer, right? There is an element now of great athletes coming through, right? And as those great athletes come through, they get to the professional level because of their athleticism, but they may not know what their main skills are. And so then they sort of learn the game almost on the back end as they become professionals. There are some young players who are in the system at 18, 19, like Azhar Ali might be a really good example of this, right? And Stuart Broad is certainly a great example of this. And they go on to be very different cricketers than they were originally in the system for. Right? Kyle Jamieson, another one. And so once you're in the system and you have access to all the attributes and the best coaches, if you have another great skill, Mark Richardson, right? Mark Richardson, professional cricketer, has access to developing his batting. Turns out his batting's a lot better than his bowling, but we didn't know that. David Boone, I'm pretty sure David Boone did some bowling in either Tasmanian or Australian under-19 cricket, right? We have these cricketers a lot and they find their other skills. So it's actually fairly common. It's just, and so spin is a skill that you can kind of work on and become good at if you can rip the ball. Like if you have that one or two little bits of athleticism, you can maybe turn that into a career. Whereas, as I said before, it's very hard to do that if you're not built to be a fast bowler. Whereas what happens if you develop to be built like a fast bowler? That's when you get your Kyle Jamiesons and your Jofra Archers and your Mitchell Starks, right? Who have these growth spurts or strength spurts or whatever it may be, right? And they change who they are. So yeah, it's a fascinating question, Joseph. It's a really, really good one. I've said this for a long time, but the questions on Wagon Wheel are just so ridiculously of a high level. In fact, they're so much of a high level, I need a break. I'll be back in a moment with any super chats and to finish up the Wagon Wheel.
Ross Taylor couldn't see at night or when the clouds were in. Eventually, he had to see an eye specialist who would fix his eyesight. In the 2 years before the change, he still averaged more than 50 in international cricket. The top level of batting talent can basically see in the dark. That is who we are talking about in our new book, The Art of Batting. Head over and order your copy today.
ABCD says, you see Ponting ever taking over the national coaching role, India, Australia, or Dravid coming back to Indian coaching? I think it would be unlikely with Jarrod. I kind of feel like he feels like it's complete. I haven't chatted to him since he stepped down. No, I don't think I have. I might see him. I don't know if he's in the UK this summer. I might see him if he's around. But I haven't chatted to him since he stepped down. And I was chatting to him in quite a stressful time. I think I've chatted. Yeah. So maybe things have changed a little bit since then. And he also told me that he would never coach the national team, and he went on to coach the national team. So, you know, fair play. I would be surprised if he would do it for a very long time in Jarrod's case. I feel like there is an element of jobs done. I think he really loves coaching younger cricketers as well. Like, you know, and you know, in the IPL probably allows him a bit of both, a little bit working with elite cricketers and a little bit of everything else. Ponting's interesting. I just think Ponting has so many other business interests and, you know, investment interests. He has his wine company and all these things. I just wonder if it's easy to be a coach if you are involved in all those other things, right? Like, I just wonder if it's actually an easy thing to pull off. I think he likes, a lot of them just like the franchise life because you're not working, you know, coaching an international team is so full on and so stressful and everything else. It's very, very different. So I think that there is certainly just an element of no. He might just be like, this is easy. I think Ponting and Jarrod both like coaching, right? Whether they like being the idea of being the lead coach and having to do the press conferences and everything else. Even if you look at Rajasthan, it's a product, you know, or Delhi, you don't have to front up at the end of games all the time. You can be a franchise coach of a major franchise and be in the back, in the background quite a bit. I don't think you can do that as easily as a national coach. And then you don't have as many days of the year that you have to work. So I just think for both of them, I wouldn't say they won't do it. There might be a challenge. This is the thing. Those two men, above everything else, are so incredibly competitive. You just need the right person to tickle that, or the right situation to tickle that, and here they come. I didn't think McCullum would want. McCullum coaching England, I was just like, there's no way that's going to happen. He'll go off and do the other stuff. He was offered the right. He wasn't even offered the right challenge. He saw the right challenge and he took it for himself. Deep Tech says, in India, only the Kindle edition of The Art of Batting seems to be available on Amazon. Oh, that is not true, Deep Tech. That was true about a week ago, I believe. It's certainly not true now. But it was never true because The Art of Batting is available on Amazon in digital form, as you say, the Kindle edition. It was also available in the audio book. Last time I checked, and we can do a live check right on air now. The Art of Batting. Jarrod Kimber is handsome. Should be the subtitle. All right. The Art of Batting in India. Let's have a look at where we are here. I have the hardcover is available, and if you order it now, free delivery is on the 30th of July, but that's some random address in Mumbai that it's decided to give me. The paperback says free delivery on the 16th of July. Oh, there's a bit of a race going on. And you get the Kindle version and you get the audiobook version. So all four versions. I don't think we'll ever do another kind of version unless there's an update later on. But all four versions are available, Deep Tech, as we speak now. They weren't. I think the hardcover might have come online within the last week. But it might be different parts of India. I don't know, but I don't know how all this works because last time I was talking to Bloomsbury, it still wasn't in India, and then we looked on Amazon and it was all over it. I don't know, but it seems like Bloomsbury in India have finally printed the copies, and hopefully they'll be available. When we're 100% sure, we will start to promote it a lot more again. And obviously, there's a bunch of Indian podcasts and everything else who've asked me to be on, and I've tried to be holding them back a little bit, waiting for it to be on print. But thanks to everyone in India who's booked. I think it's number one in India, even without a paper copy, which is huge, and it really means a lot to me. I've always wanted to be able to sell books in multiple places, and I haven't, and because of that, I've never quite been able to sell the amount that I have. Hopefully, we can get there with this book, and thanks to everyone. If you have read the book, and this goes for any author ever, if you've read the book and you like it, where you bought it, rate it or review it, or rate and review it. You have no idea how much it helps. Those little, what have we had in Amazon? We've had 42 ratings. If we can get that up to 100 to 150 ratings, you have no idea how much that helps the algorithm and the selling of the book and everything else. It's a huge thing. So please, 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 if you've already read the book and you like it, or you've listened to it and you like it, please review us there. Samit says, Mulder declared on 367 not out as captain, 30 more minutes, and Lara's record was his. Why? Well, he's already spoken about it, Samit. Did he feel wrong for him to hold that record? How funky would that have been? Also, Luhan feels like a Jaiswal type prodigy. Could Brevis be a punt style 80 strike rate, averaging 40 with a bat? So a lot of questions there for me. He said that he declared because he wanted to win the game, which is the right reason to declare. He also said that he didn't want to take Lara's record. I think he would have felt a little bit silly taking it in that situation. Again, people need to make those decisions for themselves. He's not the only. I think a lot of people think this is like a rare thing. Players have declared many times when they could have broken records because of game situations. And also players have declared or asked for declarations at other times because they've just made enough runs, or they don't want to break a record that maybe that, they think this pitch is too flat or whatever it may be, or some other legend has it. These aren't particularly that confusing to be. Like, it's fine. And it also would have been fine if he wanted to go on. He's allowed to make these decisions. People seem really upset that a human being has decided to make a decision. It seems to me a very normal thing to do. Luhan feels like a Jaiswal type prodigy. I need to see more of him in this level. I love him, obviously, in T20 cricket. I need to see a lot more of him in the red ball before I decide that. And could Brevis be a part star? Yeah, I think so. I think that's within the realms. Could see that happening. Sorab Javiri Music says, ridiculous question. Well, let's do it. How do you and some other YouTubers answer questions thinking that the person who asked the question is listening? I mean, are you just talking to a camera? Is it difficult to concentrate like that? That is a ridiculous question. No, I think it's a really good question. When we started Wagon Wheel, I didn't want to do it. I really, really didn't want to do it. But at that stage, there were a lot of American sports writer podcasts that were where the person was speaking on their own. And I kind of felt like, okay, I know I have the skills to be able to do it. There's a Red Ink with me and Danny Morrison where we talk about how we both grew up in the theatre, right? My mum ran a theatre company, very small amateur theatre company, but I grew up acting on stage and giving monologues, right? Like I was in a lot, probably 5 or 6 plays. I was quite often given, either the comedic roles or the sort of monologue-y type roles. That for whatever reason, that was what suited the way that I acted. I'm also an only child, so I have an inner monologue going the entire time because I had no one to talk to and bother the way that people with brothers and sisters do. So that maybe there's elements of that as well. I get a question, I'm answering the question. The hard thing is kind of where do you look, right? Because the question is here, my face is here, and the camera is here. So they're not exactly right next to each other. We obviously try and line them up so it looks like I'm roughly looking back at you, because I think if you're on your own, that looks a little bit better. I always have trouble looking at watching people who are not looking roughly near the camera, but also don't think you have to always make love to the camera, right? I've got a lot better at just being natural and just feeling it. But yeah, I don't know how to answer it perfectly. Our big worry was, would people listen to it when it's just you talking? And if you go back to the original Wagon Wheel, we actually did it via, remember there was all those apps that allowed you to, there was Spotify Green Room and I forget what the original version of that was that another company had. We actually had people asking the questions verbally. And then after a while, we're like, they had bad audio, or like people would call from like the side of a road in a wind tunnel or something, right? And also those apps sort of died off a little bit. And we realized that people just needed to be able to ask the questions and then we could answer them. I'm just answering the question here as I would if you were in front of me. The only difference is you can't interrupt me. And so I don't know if I just have a natural conversation style that works there or not. I honestly don't know. It works for me and I don't ask too many questions. I've spent a lot of time commentating cricket, which is also long conversations. Even if there's 2 of you there. And and everything else. So there's obviously something within that skill set that I have that everyone else, that other people don't have. I know there are people who are great at broadcasting who are terrified by the idea of doing what I do, right? So everyone's different, but for me, it's just, yeah, I don't know. Master PPV says, let's say there was a possibility of trade players between nations. Only one player, though. Between India and Australia, who would each country want from the other, and who would they replace? Well, that's not how trades work, is it? So what you would be asking for, what India would want, is Australia has a surplus of seam bowling all-rounders at the moment. So Australia would be willing to trade away a seam bowling all-rounder for a frontline spin bowling all-rounder, would be my guess. So you would probably, and then it's about age, right? So a Bo Webster for Akshar Patel is an interesting trade for both countries, because Bo Webster can bowl home and away for India, because he can bowl spin at home and bowl away. That would be a very, very interesting trade. Akshar Patel boosts Australia's batting, right? So if he's batting at 8 and you've got Stark and Cummins behind him, hello, that's pretty good. So that's the trade that makes the most sense to me off the top of my head. I suppose India could also, if India thought they were going to be good for the next 2 or 3 years, they could take a running flyer on one of the senior bowlers from Australia and give them Shreyas Iyer. Australia would take a Shreyas Iyer trade, right? Without any issue. And then the other option is, if Australia don't think that they're ever going to be able to get Jai Richardson on the field, could India give like a Prithvi Shaw? Australia may not want him. I think of someone like a Prithvi Shaw. Probably not going to be Sai Sudarshan. Devdutt Padikkal, Gaikwad type player, right? Who would fit into the Australian top order to take a flyer on Jai Richardson, because if he's fit, over the next 3 years, he could take a lot of wickets for them, gives them an extra, explosive seamer when Bumrah's not around, however you want to look at it. So yeah, I think that's completely off the top of my head. It's a really fascinating question, but not particularly easy to answer. Shrikant says, who does Gill remind you of technically? Stylists of yore like Mark Waugh, Laxman, or more backfoot players? Were more. Gill is a front foot style specialist. Is he akin to old English players like Graveney Cowdrey? Azharuddin is the player that I was kind of thinking of. He's probably a little bit more technically correct than Azharuddin. But the interesting thing I find about Shubman Gill is he might be one of the few players in the world who can play a genuine, and I mean a genuine, front foot forward defense to bowlers in this era. He really does get a long way forward and looks over the ball in a way that maybe Rahul Dravid is the last player to have done. Is there a combination of Rahul Dravid and Azharuddin? I'm trying to think of other players, other countries. I'm trying to remember Mohammed Yusuf. Is there a bit of Mohammed Yusuf in him as well? Maybe a little bit of, maybe Callis? He definitely has a more of an old school technique. So the whole Graveney Cowdrey thing I get, but there's a bit of more of a fluidity in the way that he moves, which is maybe more towards that sort of, a modern style version of those. But fantastic question. Thank you very much for the last 2 super chats. Very, very generous. Samek says, West Indies bowling talent pipeline still thrives, but batting seems to be in structural decline. West Indies bowlers might have rolled their own batters for minus 100. Yeah, they should have bowled Australia out a couple of times for that. South Africa had a similar drop-off. Historically, do teams regress more due to batting trend or a long-standing pattern? No, I think it's just random. Like, you can have periods where you have a lot of batters coming through, and you have periods where you have lots of bowlers coming through. Some of it has to do with the wickets. West Indies is a place where it has been very hard to score any runs for a very long time on their domestic pitches. How many of their players make it to test level with any confidence that they can do the job if they're averaging 28, 29, 30, 32, 34? Right? We're seeing that with Australia right now. And we said that England, that was a big issue with English cricket, right? That a lot of the players, it's like talent is not always the issue. Confidence, technique, trusting yourself, all those things can be a bit of an issue. I think that's been a real one for the West Indies for a long time. You look at, was it Nikita Miller has a first class bowling average of like, is it 17, 18? Is it 16? I've seen Nikita Miller play, and I think he probably should have received more test matches than he did. Where are we? First class cricket, 16.3. I just don't know if you can take 500 wickets at 16.3 and say that the wickets are okay. Yeah? I don't know if that also makes a case for South Africa. I just think South Africa were kind of picking their sides incorrectly for a little while. I think their methods were wrong in a tough era. I think even if they picked more sensibly, I think they would have struggled. But in a tough era, I think their style of selecting team, I just don't think they were ever going to have success picking the sorts of teams they were on the sorts of pitches they were playing at home and then had to handle away from home. Those players were just not talented enough to handle those conditions, is my honest opinion of what they were picking before. Now we're starting to get through to them picking players based on overall talent a little bit more, and they seem a lot better. So things have picked up, things have changed quite dramatically. But yeah, with West Indies, I do think that the pitches are not a big help and certainly play a large part. Thank you to all of our super chatters there and to everyone else in the room. I saw lots of you, and I saw Jessica in there, and Doomslayer, Noah. Was Arco in there before as well? Arco's quite often around. Robert. Thank you to everyone who was in the chat and everything else. Please support us on Patreon. This show could not be more funded by Patreon or more inspired by Patreon. In fact, it's because of the sorts of people that support us on Patreon and ask the questions that this show is as good as it is. And great work from the super chatters there as well. Support your local content creators. Like, subscribe, share all that stuff. Go and buy a copy of The Art of Batting if you feel the need. And final pitch for this. I am 6:30 tomorrow night at the Waterstones in Piccadilly, the big Waterstones in the centre of London. I am doing the live speech with Tim Wigmore, where we'll be talking about cricket and books and each other. I'll be making fun of Wigmore. He'll try and make fun of me, I'm sure, as well. And then that will go for an hour. Cost you 10 quid to come to that. You can buy some books. You can get them signed. And then afterwards, we'll probably head to a bar. But Wigmore's probably already in his brain. He's already got like 3 bars, trying to work out the best vibe for him afterwards, and we'll have a couple of drinks as well. So especially those of you who have traveled in for the test match, whether coming in from another English city or whether you've traveled in from India for this test match, Jarrod Kimber live. I don't do many live events. Maybe one day I'll do more, but if you want to come and see me, I will see you there. If you're listening to this on the audio podcast, I've already done the event and it was a wild success.
Brian Lara used pot plants to work on his placement. John Wright glued his glove to his bat. Sachin Tendulkar dug up practice pitches. Tatenda Taibu cut the top off his bat. Claire Taylor used a hockey grip. Steve Smith was from tennis. Dean Jones would call phantom runs. And Victor Trumper turned the nets into a war zone to survive. The best batters in the world do whatever they have to make runs. We have told their stories in our new book, The Art of Batting.